Yuki Kawamura is currently the shortest player in the NBA, and at 5'8" is easily one of my favorite players to watch, and I'd argue a top 5 player ever for his height. So his film study is mandatory, especially for undersized guards. Now, with smaller guards, yes, a lot of it is the explosiveness that helps him play at this level, but it's even more so the variety of little things he does better than anyone else. Angles, timing, physicality, decision making, and I'll break it all down for y'all today. Let's get it. So first off, let's cover his attacking ability and how he maneuvers the court and gets to the rim. One thing you'll notice is that he actually covers a ton of ground. I'd argue more than many taller players. And this is mostly due to his ability to float the ball and move with that live dribble in his hands, both downhill and to the side. Like, you'll see him get to the rim from the 3-point line in one dribble quite often, which is insane for a 5'8" guard, but helps him make up for a bit of what he loses height-wise. And even something like this, being able to rotate without taking an extra dribble, allows him to be super efficient and one step ahead of the defense, all while protecting the rock. But he can also compress his dribbles too, take more of them in less space, like right here, where he takes 3 dribbles in just a few feet of space to manage his distance better on a short pull-up. Now, speaking of spaces, one of the biggest advantages to being smaller is being able to get through these small spaces easier. And one thing about Kawamura is that he gets through these single gaps incredibly well. His maneuverability in small spaces overall is crazy, and it's something we see on the defensive side of the ball too. Whether it's with a low dribble, a push-out dribble, a pickup, this ability to sneak through these tight spaces is huge and opens up so much for him, because now defenders have to do all they can to close these gaps, which will open up passes easier. Hence the 8 assists per game, and it's something we'll talk about later. Another really good tool of his is making these right angle explosions, where he'll be moving across the court, which causes that defender to relax and for him to probe these gaps in the court and then explode from there going downhill. Notice the timing too, where he explodes with the ball on the way down in kind of an unorthodox rhythm. Similarly, he plays really well in a defensive stance, which, ball handling speaking, is where his back is turned to the defender, protecting or defending the ball, and using that to kind of inch his way closer to the lane or into a shot. Other times he'll get moving downhill a bit faster and use these super jittery speed changes to throw off the defender's timing and angle. He exaggerates these too a good amount, and once he gets an advantage and really slows it down like right here, it's tough for this defender to not get put on their heels and stop their momentum too. And by the time they regain it, he's out of there. He also loves using this Nash dribble going under the bucket on the baseline, which is one of my favorite options for undersized guards who can really work in these spaces comfortably. And especially with a good big who's constantly looking to seal off, space will open up for a comfortable little short jumper. Also, whether it's off a ball screen, an ISO blow by, whatever, after creating an advantage, he constantly looks for contact pretty much more than anyone I've ever watched. It's insane. And that leads me into one of the most important tools for small guards you can have, slipping by defenders on the drive. Now, there are a few different ways you can get from here to here as an undersized guard. One is using that maneuverability to take a crazy tight angle like this. You can also use a strong pound dribble to change direction slightly into that defender's shoulder. And if you bump them, create contact, they're off balance. If not, he's usually slipping by them like this. And then my favorite, which is bumping or swinging into that inside shoulder. You'll see this a lot with smaller guards as they really rotate here to get this arm moving backwards into the defender, which stops their momentum a bit and projects him forward enough to now have position in front. It's almost like he's throwing an elbow, but he's really just reaching out to take a big stride while again kind of swinging the ball into the defender's inside shoulder. And this helps him a ton to create a big advantage around the rim. So now let's dive into his finishing ability. As we discussed, the ability to sneak around the defender helps a lot because now he's finishing from in front of his defender rather than on the side. You'll also notice his ability to finish with insane touch at super high speeds, which is essential as a small guard. When you're coming at a defender like a bullet, it's tough for them to really be aggressive defensively, and that's one of Kawamura's go-to strategies. Now with this, he's constantly adjusting the release timing to make sure it's less blockable, but it's already tough to stop when he's attacking so aggressively. Similarly, he'll jump from super far, and by jumping horizontally, he'll throw off the defender's timing and then really float in the air to get stable and find a controlled shot, which requires him to be fantastic finishing on the way down too, as he uses this ability to continue separation and to get himself to a more comfortable backboard angle to release the ball. Now, while he's in the air, he's also constantly looking to contort his body to get the ball as far as possible from the defender, like you see on these extensions here. And this mid-air adaptability is yet another benefit of being a smaller guard and having shorter limbs, which allows for heightened control in the air. He's able to rotate, be off balance, sneak through small spaces, and much more super gracefully in the air because of this. And no matter how much contact he gets on any of these, he's special at working through contact and remaining focused to adapt and finish. So all these are qualities to work on as a smaller guard finishing around the rim. I'm sorry to break it to y'all, but only sticking to the basics doesn't really work for undersized hoopers. And lastly, he has incredible feel for shot blockers' range. This is an underrated quality, but being able to know when a shot blocker is in range to block you and when they're not, and then trusting this on the finish is a great sense to have and comes with a ton of experience and just getting blocked a lot growing up. Now let's transition more into shot making and jumpers. First off, obviously as a smaller guard, he's really good at separating a bit extra to make up for his smaller stature. But you'll also notice that he doesn't over separate here, just enough to get the defender on their heels and then be a few milliseconds later up into the air. And sometimes it's not even worth separating extra because the timing of his shot is so unorthodox on pickups like this that it's super tough for defenders to time it up or anticipate. And if you combine that with a super quick pop off the ground, then yeah, it's pretty much unblockable. Now, once he gets a little bit closer too, he has a wide variety of short jumper and floater tools that he can deploy, which he's again adjusting the timing on, fading, hanging in the air, and more that are difficult things to do, but he makes it look easy because I'd imagine he's worked on these things and embraced them rather than shying away from quote unquote non-fundamentals. It's crazy how well he uses the glass too, which is something you don't see many players do from in front of the rim, but I found gives you more room for error. Now, technique-wise, he has a pretty ideal jumper as a small guard. He elevates more than enough to release it from a high point and get it over taller defenders, but also shoots on the way up 99% of the time and keeps it more of a one-motion shot, which allows for better energy transfer and therefore more range and easier to shoot when moving backwards. Sometimes he'll jump a bit higher than others, of course, depending on his momentum and the level of a contest, but almost every time it's a one motion, which is something you don't see often from guys who elevate pretty high on their shots. And lastly, he used the threat of his drive incredibly well. Defenders, especially in ball screen situations, are scared shitless of him blowing by and getting downhill. And rightfully so, I would be too. So the second they feel behind, they make a big jump at any downhill motion, which allows them to pull back into three balls over and over again. And you'll see these trailing defenders take an angle to cut him off downhill, even when he's not attacking the spot, because they don't want to let him get ahead of steam downhill. So he's able to let that hezzy pull, like right here, fly pretty easily, even with the right hand, which is actually a tough shot to hit consistently for even many high-level guards. Now, while we're on that topic, let's go straight into ball screens and how he's so good at maneuvering the pick and roll. So first off, he's constantly looking to get to the other side of his roller, which is a great technique, especially when you have a big who can set these Gortat screens or seals to get him an uncontested lane to the bucket. This definitely requires taking a tight angle off rip and creating some contact to keep the initial defender behind, but it's worth it. He also loves these bounce out and string out shots. Bounce out where he just quickly bounces out to space before that initial defender can get back, and string out where he really strings this big out and covers ground to get space from his man, and as soon as that big retreats, the shot's going up. So he's constantly looking for this spot where it's tough for the big to keep going and leave his man completely, but it's far enough from his initial defender. As well as the perfect moment to explode in these situations when the big retreats and the guard isn't back yet. Now, going back to what we talked about earlier, he's like a heat-seeking missile coming off this screen and is constantly looking for contact. This allows him to effectively get this guy out of the play and make it a 1v1 versus the big. Other times, if he notices he can get some momentum on a late big, He does. He uses his speed like crazy, as well as gets a wide position outside of that big, so now he has a nice angle to the 10. And lastly, if he can reject, it's over. He's in open space, and that's a dead mission to stop. Now finally, let's briefly touch on his passing ability. So first, being able to make passes like this, where there's no way he fully and clearly sees his teammates open, is purely dependent on noticing and deeply understanding patterns. Like here, this has got to be tough to see, but he definitely can see the tag man overcommit, which tells him everything he needs to know. Now, obviously his biggest advantage in terms of passing is the amount of attention he gets off dribble drives. He gets downhill so easily, and defenders realize that since he can get through these gaps so well, they have to close those up even tighter, which means even more teammates open and more opportunities for them to cut too. And then his kick timing is perfect. He never holds on the ball too long, so he doesn't get himself in tough situations to make these passes around bigger defenders. So hopefully you guys pick something up, whether you're a smaller guard or not. There's a lot to learn here. Make sure to check out the Small Guard Essentials program if you want to continue to train all of these things in a structured manner for 3 months. I'll put that link in the description. See you guys next time.